watching Keepin' It Green. I'm your host, Debbie Klughers, and today I have with me David Benzaquen, the campaigns coordinator for Farm Sanctuary.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for coming. Your organization is one of the country's leading farm animal advocacy and protection, and what else do you guys do?
That's correct. We're the nation's leading farm animal protection organization. We have about 200,000 members and supporters nationwide, and we've been around since 1986. And since then, we've worked to protect farm animals through rescue, education, and advocacy.
Very good.
We've rescued over 20,000 animals in the last 24 years,
wow.
And we care for them at our two sanctuaries. One is a 175-acre property in upstate New York, in Watkins Glen, and the other is 300 acres and is in Orland, California.
Nice.
And in addition, we do education, and we educate people about the cruelties of factory farming and the benefits of adopting a vegan or plant-based diet as the single best way to help the animals, the environment, and public health. And we also advocate for changes in how farm animals are treated.
And you also advocate for all kinds of different legislation, national, local,
Absolutely.
and regional legislation. I've read a lot of your things that you're working on right now.
Yes, we work on the state level and the local level and the federal level to change how farm animals are treated, to encourage plant-based eating, and to help people make those compassionate choices.
That's great. And you know, we like to start off with environmental tip, and today it's very easy.
Sure.
Our tip is, you had said, go vegan.
Absolutely. Going vegan is the best thing you can do for the animals, the environment, and your health.
And even, you know, that may seem extreme to some. So I know Paul McCartney, he's a big advocate of meatless Mondays.
Sure.
So one day a week, I think you were telling me you have some stats on
Absolutely.
what 1 day a week of lowering your meat consumption
Has a huge impact on the environment. In fact, if you eat just 1 less pound of beef a year, you save more water than you would by not taking a single shower for the entire year. So imagine how much you do with 1 day or more.
1 less pound of meat
a year.
A year.
Saves more water than the entire year of not showering.
Now, why is that? Like, why is all this water necessary to produce cattle?
Sure. Well, the big issue is that when you're raising cows and other animals for food, you're not only just growing the grain to feed us, you're growing the grain to feed the animals to feed us. Okay. And it's such a long process with so many pieces in between. So first you have to clear cut the forests and the rainforests just to get the grain to feed the animals. And worldwide, over 50% of forests and rainforests, including 70% of the Amazon, have been clear cut just to graze cattle or to raise feed for animals.
Wow.
Then you have to transport that feed to the farm to feed the animals.
Gotcha.
Then you've got to run the farm to feed the animals, and that takes a lot of water and a lot, to water the fields and to take, do all that. All the energy goes into that. Then you've got to transport the animals to the slaughterhouse. Then you've got to slaughter the animals.
So it's not even just water, it's the carbon emissions
everything.
from the transportation,
Absolutely.
Fertilizers that's going to feed the plants, and
absolutely. Speaking of
on and on and on.
Yeah. Just to go back to water really quickly, the average American uses 4,000 gallons of water to produce 1 day's food. But if they switch to a plant-based diet, they would consume just 300 gallons of water. It's a huge saving.
Wow. Because of all the in-between stuff. You're just concentrating on raising the crops. You're not concentrating on all that other.
That's right. And it would save so many crops to go vegan as well. If you look at the amount of food that's given to farm animals instead of to people, in the United States, 70% of grain and 80% of corn is fed to farm animals.
Right. I read it takes, because I did a project on this as well a few years back, and it takes 7 or 8 pounds of grain to feed an animal to produce 1 pound of meat,
That's
1
correct.
pound of protein. So it's like,
it's such a waste.
You could feed, starving people that
Absolutely.
7 pounds rather than giving them 1 pound of meat, which isn't really. You can also look at the health benefits.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of diseases are. I'm kind of laughing a little bit because it seems so silly, but a lot of diseases are linked directly to, especially red meat consumption and high-fat foods and all that kind of thing.
Yep, animal foods are the leading causes of cancers, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, high cholesterol, all the leading killers of Americans. And so if we just switched from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, or if we even just reduced our intake of not only meat but also eggs and dairy, we would dramatically improve our health.
Now, I think sometimes when people think of, they go to the supermarket and they see this, nicely packaged, package of flesh. They, they might associate with a little cow on a pasture and a nice, nice grazing pasture. But factory farming is really bad for the environment because there's just so much manure, so much waste from the animals themselves, and this stuff all leaches into the groundwater, and then not only the groundwater, it causes eutrophication of coastal waters. Why don't you talk a little bit about
Sure.
that?
Well, in the United States, 35,000 miles of rivers in 22 states have been permanently contaminated by runoff from industrial farm animal agriculture.
And I don't think people know that.
I think it's not talked about enough. You know, these issues are so central to everyday life. They're central to how we protect our communities from polluted water, how we protect our communities from climate change, how we take care of our children at a time when, you know, this generation being born now are expected to have shorter lifespans than their parents because of the high rates of diabetes and cancer and obesity that are coming on at higher rates than ever before. So how can we protect our children? We've got to educate them about these issues.
Talking about the children, there's a new pending legislation going on to help feed children healthier, or to give children a choice. In the schools. And it used to be that a kid would need a doctor's note, that if they didn't want milk, they needed a doctor's note or something.
Right.
I mean, that's like, you know, some people don't have access to a doctor to go get a note to say, you know, don't give my patient milk. But can you talk about this?
Absolutely, yeah. Congressman Jared Polis from Colorado, first-term congressman, he just introduced a bill called the Healthy School Meals Act of 2010. We're so excited to be supporting it. It's really important legislation. Right now, the Child Nutrition Act, which governs all of the meals for children through reduced and free lunch programs, is being reauthorized. And so what this bill would do is it would amend that act to allow and to incentivize schools that give their students the option of having plant-based foods and non-dairy beverages. Because in every school in America, every student is required to be given milk. Often it's chocolate milk and strawberry milk and milks that have even more sugar than the stuff than sodas. But they're being forced to give this because the dairy industry has been so powerful to lobby for that requirement. Meanwhile, you know, when you look at students nationwide, so many students, particularly on the free and reduced lunch programs, are lactose intolerant or don't consume milk for ethical, religious, or environmental reasons. And this bill would finally give them the opportunity to get the same calcium, the same protein they need, but without compromising their values or their health.
Right, they don't want the children to be offered juice or water. They want them to be offered something nutritionally, you know, equivalent to, you know, milk with the proteins and the calcium. So they don't just want to say, okay, you don't want milk, you get juice. They want them to be offered, you know, whether it's soy milk or almond milk or some other kind of, you know, so that's good. They're thinking bigger, you know.
Sure.
Yeah,
the big problem with the school lunch programs in this country is that they are completely governed by federal subsidies. And the federal government is overwhelmingly subsidizing, you know, commodities like meat, dairy, eggs, corn, and soy and potatoes, all of which are found in deep fried versions. So by passing this bill, young people will have the opportunity to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and the real protein-rich foods that are not coming from these factory farm animal products that will really help them grow strong, will help them do better in school, will help them behave better, and will give them a better life.
They're growing. Their whole system, their whole body is just growing, and they need to have a healthier start in life.
Absolutely. And we highly encourage everybody to go on our website, farmsanctuary.org, and under our action alerts, we please ask you to make a phone call and send an email to your Congress member and ask them to co-sponsor the Healthy School Meals Act of 2010.
That's great. Another interesting fact is that humans are the only animal that drinks the milk of another species, and it's a little bit weird.
Sure, it's absolutely weird.
But it's ingrained in us. Milk is good for you. Milk is good for you. But you know, like you said, so many kids are lactose intolerant.
Sure, and beyond that, many people think that milk is a leading protective agent in protecting us from osteoporosis. But the United States has the highest consumption of dairy in the world, and yet we also have the highest rate of osteoporosis in the world. So it's very backwards when the industry is able to convince people of that. The reality is, if people cut down dairy, which is rich in fat and cholesterol and unhealthy fats, and they replaced it with the non-dairy alternatives, they would find their health much improved.
What are some of the alternatives that people can do with a plant-based diet in order to, people want protein, they want the kids to grow healthy and strong, you know, what are some of the alternatives that people can go purchase?
Absolutely. The amazing thing is that everything that you want to find from animal products can now be found from vegan products in a healthier form, in an affordable form, in a tasty form, and in a way that's better for the animals, for the environment, and our health.
Explain the difference between, before we go into the specific foods, but vegan, vegetarian. Explain those two terms, please.
A vegetarian is anybody who does not consume the flesh of animals, so fish, chicken, poultry, and red meat, and other meats. A vegan is somebody who does not consume any animal products, refrains from using